Hafaday and good morning. This public hearing conducted by the Committee on Economic Development, Agriculture, Power and Energy Utilities, and the Arts is called to order at 9:02 a.m. Please bear with me this morning. I'm wearing a mask because I'm just overcoming a little flu or a bug that I had. I feel much better today, but just to be safe, I wanted to make sure I don't spread any lingering germs I may have to anyone else, so that's why I'm wearing a mask today. Notice of the hearing was disseminated to all local media outlets on November 10th of 2022, with the second notice provided on November 16th of 2022. Notice of the hearing was also made on the Guam Legislature's website. This morning, the committee will hear testimony on the appointment of Ernesto V. Espaldon, Jr., a member of the Board of Directors of the Guam Economic Development Authority. Upon conclusion of the appointment hearing, we'll take a 5-minute recess before we hear testimony on Bill number 351-35 COR. I'd like to welcome my colleague who's joining me this morning, Senator Terlaje. Morning. Now we'll proceed with discussions on the appointment of Ernesto V. Espaldon, Jr. as a member of the Board of Directors of the Guam Economic Development Authority. We'll hear testimony from those who've joined us this morning. I will call on participants based on how their names appear on the sign-in sheet. So far, we only have the nominee signed in this morning actually to provide testimony, but if anyone else is here this morning, please, we'll begin with testimony from anyone else other than the nominee this morning. Please. All right, good morning, Ms. Melanie Mendiola. Please, for the record, introduce yourself and you may begin with your testimony. Thank you.
Hafaday, good morning, Senator Ridgell and members of the Committee on Economic Development, Agriculture, Power and Energy Utilities, and the Arts. And thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony on the reappointment of Ernesto Espaldon, Jr. to the Guam Economic Development Authority Board of Directors. My name is Melanie Mendiola, and I'm the CEO and Administrator of the Guam Economic Development Authority. GIDA is extremely pleased that Governor Lulian Guerrero and Lieutenant Governor Joshua Tenorio have appointed him to serve on our board once more. Director Espaldon, or Director Jun, as he is known at GIDA, has diligently served on the GIDA board for 2 terms. His long-standing career as the owner and operator of Wendy's Guam and Cold Stone Creamery Guam gives him a unique perspective on our economy. He understands the cost of doing business in Guam, workforce needs, and other idiosyncrasies that impact our local businesses. This also means that he understands the value and opportunities that investing and opening a business in Guam offers. In my tenure as GIDA CEO, I have seen Director Jun take an active role in our investment committee. His role as committee chair has reinvigorated our efforts to effectively manage our operational reserve and special loan fund investments. He has also been active in the review of GIDA loan applications and is also a strong contributor to the discourse on QC applications and other economic development initiatives. All in all, his service as vice chairman of the GIDA board has improved significantly GIDA's ability to carry out its mandates. His professional advice and support has guided GIDA management and staff in carrying out our mission to develop a sound and sustainable economy. I'm sure that Director Jun joins me in, and he's always very open in sharing, in commending the hard work of the GIDA management and staff in all that has been achieved in the last 4 years. One of our proudest achievements is the carrying out of several small business financial assistance programs in response to the pandemic. Director Jun's knowledge of the struggles facing small businesses throughout this pandemic greatly assisted in the framework of our grant and loan applications, and because of this, we've been able to provide millions of dollars of assistance to our small business community. As GIDA moves forward, resolute in our commitment to continue Guam's economic recovery, I respectfully ask the members of Imina 36 na Legislature in Guahan to confirm Director Espaldon's reappointment to the GIDA board as soon as possible. And I'll stay for questions if you have any. And I also, before I left, I wanted to share, I believe this is our last hearing with you, Mr. Chair. I echo the sentiments of our board chair, David John, at our last board meeting when I say that it has been a pleasure working with you over the last 4 years. Our agency really appreciates all the support you've provided as our oversight chair and the partnership over the last 4 years of you, as well as the members of your team diligently attending all of our board meetings, having hearings for us, listening to us, and the discourse on all of the legislation relevant to us. So we wanted to extend our thanks for your service as oversight to the GITA board. We're going to miss you, and we look forward to seeing what you have going on in the next few years. Senator Taitigui, we look forward to seeing you again next year, working with you. It's not always an easy road with you, but that's okay. You make us better at our job, and you make us better. And I don't expect that, and I think that good discourse is always important, especially for the benefit of our island community. So, Senator, thank you as well, and we look forward to you in the next term.
Thank you, everyone. You're too kind. Thank you so much. I appreciate the kind words this morning. Okay, is there anyone else here to provide testimony for Mr. Espaldon's nomination this morning? If not, I would like to call upon the nominee himself.
Senator Ridgell, Senator Taitigui, and members of the committee that may be watching online, Hafaday and good morning. My name is Ernesto Espaldon Jr., but everyone calls me June. I have served on the GITA board for 2 terms and am grateful and honored that Governor Leon Guerrero and Lieutenant Governor Tenorio have renewed my appointment for another 4-year term to the board of the Guam Economic Development Authority. I most recently served as vice chairman of the board, as well as chairman of the investments committee. My wife, Sumiko, who is present here today, and I have 2 children, Caleb, who is 19, a sophomore in college, and Alexa, my daughter, 16 years old, a junior in high school. We reside in Upper Tumon. I was born and raised here as the youngest of 6 siblings. I am especially proud of the legacy of service my family has had on the island of Guam, beginning with my late father, Dr. Ernesto Espaldon, who served as a 3-term senator, my mother, Dr. Leticia Espaldon, who was director of public health for 8 years, and my brother Jim, who also served as a legislator. For over 2 decades, I've been a member of the business community as the owner and chief executive officer of Quick Service Foods Incorporated, the franchise holder for Wendy's Guam and Cold Stone Creamery. I am proud to be working with our dynamic youth on Guam through Cold Stone and with some of the most humble, genuine, and wholehearted people that I have met in my life at Wendy's. Guam is a challenging place to do business for a number of reasons, but the COVID-19 pandemic was the most recent hurdle we have been persevering through. I quickly became aware of the need to adapt to the public health guidelines. But even now, tremendous food cost pressures and inflation in general certainly concerns me. I believe this perspective as a business owner, and more importantly, as someone in a position that takes care of over 200 people and their families, informs many of my actions and decisions I have made as a member of the board of directors, including my consistent support towards pandemic relief for our small businesses and financial support through grants to our community organizations. I have additional oversight as chair of GITA's investment committee to manage the investments held in Operations Reserve, as well as special funds for our loan guarantee program. We have updated our investment policy statement, went from 1 to 2 investment advisory firms, and hold regularly quarterly meetings. Recently, GITA has invited commissioners from the Guam Ancestral Lands Commission to join us to learn about the fiduciary role of investment management, which they plan to utilize for their land bank trust monies. I have also sat on as GIDA's board of directors representative for the conversations and investment bank proposals for the refinancing of utility bonds. The last focus area, in addition to my regular involvement in the board of directors, is my work in the lending area. I have sat on the credit review committee providing feedback and guidance for a number of loans to small businesses trying to contribute to our economy and provide employment. I hope I have shown you that our GIDA board is a working board through the pandemic and now in this time of recovery. Overall, my experience on the board of directors has been productive and very positive. I have enjoyed getting to know the management and staff at the agency. Their commitment to the mission of the agency to build a sound and sustainable economy is to be commended. I thank GIDA Administrator Mel Mendiola and her team, which many of them are here today, or some of them are here today, for their conscientious leadership to provide for all businesses, big and small. In particular, they will tell you that I have been an advocate to ensure communication of our programs and services, especially to those not in the know. Thank you for this opportunity to present before you, and know that I am humbled yet proud to continue to serve our community. Thank you and good morning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Espaldon, for your testimony this morning. At this time, I'll open it up to my colleague, Senator Terlaje, for any questions or comments she may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and hope you feel better. Thank you. You know, I'm just amazed at how people would like to step up to the plate and give back to the community. And you've been quite an exception. You're a very busy individual, plus a family, you know, that you're raising to actually give back. I mean, this board membership is not a paid gig, you know, and what you're doing and sacrificing is greatly appreciated, you know, and I see all the work you're doing, especially with GIDA. You know, they have so many programs. Anybody go on their website, you'll just see how busy they really are, you know, to handle a lot of counts, but especially those who are in trying times during the COVID. And I'd like to commend you for all the work you've been doing in overseeing the LEAP program, as well as other loans that were distributed to businesses that need it. One of my concerns, though, and I'd like to ask your opinion on this, is with the LEAP program, some of the businesses that came to receive the funding, there was a stipulation on how the money was being spent. You know, a certain percentage was going to go to utilities, other to salaries. It was the same process that was given to, I think, something SBA or a PPP, the same PPP, which was a guideline that I thought was, you know, well put in place and to follow. So I'm hearing that some of the companies that took out the LEAP program for their companies did not spend it correctly. So they're having to either pay it back or coming back to GIDA for a loan. So can you kind of elaborate on what is GIDA doing, and what does the board, when they review these circumstances and timelines to repay it, or have they all, you know, complied to your guidelines for the LEAP program?
Right. You know, thank you for that question. You know, one of the things that I have seen with the GIDA management is with the rollout of these programs, you know, they have worked so hard to develop the guidelines, and oftentimes using the best practices or using examples. And oftentimes there might be things that may not line up correctly, or that we would find after the fact. You really don't know until you actually go through it. And so we too have heard the concerns from some of the business community, and rest assured that the GIDA management, with consultation of the board, are actually looking at those circumstances. And I think the idea is working in a spirit of cooperation and compromise to get those issues addressed and to make sure that the process is smooth and that those issues are ironed out. So there might still be some items that need to be ironed out, but there's no doubt that we are looking at them from the standpoint of both learning, but at the same time making sure that it is, I think, properly enforced, and coming to a good compromise with the businesses to make sure that their issues are addressed.
Okay. The LEAD program incorporates, local funding, the $25 million from the government of Guam, but $25 million of it comes from federal funding.
Right.
And that's my biggest concern. We had a question cost of $44 million to the government of Guam in question costs. So the last thing we want to do is, going into the next we're in the next fiscal year, but starting next year, when the money stops coming in, that we have to pay back some of these grants that were given to us because they were improperly, spent. So I'm hoping, and as a businessman and a very successful businessman, that you oversee this, that we're not going to end up having to pay the federal government back. That's one of the biggest concerns we have to be considerate of. But other than that, I appreciate again Adonkalusi Dusmasi for not only yourself, but your family for allowing you to sit in this position, because behind every good man, there's a great woman, leading him. And I appreciate that. So I wish you the best of luck. And of course, you have my support.
Thank
Keep
you,
up the
Senator.
good work.
And I want to thank you again for bringing that up and for highlighting it, because it will stay at the back of my mind. And we will go into the new year thinking about that and making sure that we have that covered. In addition, as you probably know, we still are waiting for additional funds from the Department of Treasury for a program. It's much more restricted. It's a business program, much more restricted. But because of that, we also are very conscientious about the need to make sure that everything is right, all the procedures are followed, so that we can make sure that those monies are protected and spent correctly. So thank you again for bringing that up.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Taitigui. Mr. Espaldon, I thank you as well for your willingness to serve the public in this manner on this board. Thank you for accepting the nomination. The only real question I have for you is just, it's sort of it's obviously not something you could answer right here, right now, but perhaps if you could shed a little bit of insight into what you think about the future of Guam's economy and what we can do, what GITA can do to help Guam's economy recover in these difficult times, and to help Guam's economy diversify. I know that's something that you guys have all been looking at, and perhaps this is an extremely loaded question, so I apologize for that, but anything you can share with us on a little bit of maybe perhaps what your vision is or what your thoughts are about Guam's economy and what we can do to help Guam's economy recover and improve into the future.
I should have had a second cup of coffee, but after my first cup, let me see.
Again, I apologize. It's an extremely loaded question.
No problem.
I just kind of want to...
this is what's at the top of my head at the moment. I think it's safe to say that there's no magic bullet. We know that. We've been searching for it probably through history forever. There's no doubt that we talk about new industries, which are possible. It's very important to imagine that and even manifest that, and hopefully with some of the federal and local funds committed to growing other aspects of our economy. So we do know certain new aspects that we're looking at, whether it be telecommunications on the tech side, or even trying to figure out if we could do more on aquaculture or environmentally sustaining industry and businesses. But and the thing is that we're all thinking about that, so that's good. We all have our resources thinking about that. But what we have to remember, especially during this time, are the low-hanging fruit and the things that both GITA as well as the government can do with what we have right now. So whether that be something as simple as or it's not simple, but the different programs that keep sustaining the individuals and the businesses. Okay, that's trivial, that's fine, but how fast do we execute those programs? How quickly can we get that money into the community circulating? Something like that. Something like the efficiency with which businesses are approved to operate. Again, something we've been striving to, but for some reason I feel like that can be done. And even something as indirectly as how quickly you get your driver's license. We have some people who can't start working because the process is long. So we can see that in different aspects of the government, we have the opportunity to actually play these small roles that add up to help our economy get back on its feet. And so we will be talking about new industries, but at the same time, we want the current industries that are out there, obviously the tourism business, as well as the restaurants and the retail and the construction trade, to know that we have not forgotten about them, and that we understand that it was because of these existing businesses that our economy has gotten to where we are today over the past several decades. So I believe that it's so important to look at it holistically from that standpoint. And for those people at Rev and Tax, to the fire department, to public health, to understand that really what they're doing is not just taking care of their own little pieces of their responsibilities, but could really help to contribute to the strength of our economy. So it might not be as, sexy or as radical of an answer as you wanted, but I think it was important to remind ourselves that a lot of times we have to come back to those foundations. Many times people ask me, oh, how many more locations are you going to grow? So what's new? What are you growing? Sometimes we have them, but sometimes I say, you know what, I'm not sure, but I know that there's a lot to work on with what we have right now.
That's an excellent answer, actually. I wasn't looking for any specific answer. I actually just wanted some perspective, and that's an excellent perspective to not forget about the industries and the businesses that have brought us to where we are today. So I thank you for that perspective. I don't have any other further questions. I think you've done an excellent job so far, and you have my full support for your nomination to the GITA board. If there's no other comments and no further questions, this concludes our discussions on the appointment of Ernesto V. Espaldon Jr., and we will recess for 5 minutes before we proceed with discussions on Bill number 351-36 COR. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, half a day and good morning. We are back from a short recess. This public hearing conducted by the Committee on Economic Development, Agriculture, Power and Energy Utilities and the Arts is called back to order from recess at 9:31 a.m. Notice of the hearing was disseminated to all local media outlets on November 10th, 2022, with the second notice provided on November 16th of 2022. Notice of the hearing was also made known on the Guam Legislature's website. This hearing is on Bill number 351-35 COR. I'd like to welcome my colleague, Senator Terlaje. Thanks for joining us this morning. And with that, I will begin as the primary sponsor of this measure with my opening statement on Bill 351-36 COR. I introduced this measure, which aims to reduce power rates on Guam by creating a virtual power plant program that would enable homeowners, business owners, government agencies, and nonprofit organizations to host solar photovoltaic systems on the rooftops of their properties in exchange for credits to their electricity bills at no cost to the host. The bill was introduced along with co-sponsors Senator Joe San Agustin, Vice Speaker Tina Muña Barnes, Senator Jose Pedo Terlaje, Senator Amanda Shelton, and Senator Sabina Perez. The goal is to provide clean, renewable, distributed generation of energy for the energy grid, build our island's resilience, and most importantly, reduce power rates by reducing fuel consumption. The single largest cost that makes up your power bill is the cost of fuel. It makes up roughly around the area of 70% of your power bill. Renewable energy uses no fuel, and by eliminating fuel costs, it should reduce power bills. So what is a virtual power plant? A virtual power plant is a system where a network of rooftop solar systems and battery storage systems work together like a single power plant. The virtual power plant is managed by computers and special software that controls the output of solar energy and the storage of solar energy to match the power system's needs. Virtual power plant systems have been employed across Australia. It's a system that's been promoted by Tesla owner Elon Musk, and similar systems known as solar host programs have been employed in the state of Texas. In addition to this, I believe Tesla is looking at expanding the virtual power plant programs that it has into other states, including Texas and California. As it stands, Guam is reliant on fossil fuels, which makes the island vulnerable to the volatility of oil prices. Again, nearly 70% of an average ratepayer's bill is attributed to the cost of fuel that is driven by the global oil market. This has placed Guam residents in a vulnerable position that has negatively affected ratepayers, increased the cost of goods and services, reduced the purchasing power of Guam's families, increased the cost of living, and overall been a detriment to the island's economy. You see, on Guam we have no oil, no natural gas, no natural fuel resources other than renewable energy. This means that we import all of our fuel, which means we send our money off island into oil-rich economies and into the pockets of big oil. Instead, I believe we should look towards producing our own energy through the only energy source we have available on Guam, which is renewable energy. This will keep more money on island circulating in our economy and keeping it in our pockets. Over the past decade, renewable energy alternatives such as solar photovoltaic systems have become more affordable and more accessible. Such systems have already begun to lower the energy costs for residents and businesses who have been fortunate enough to afford making such an investment out of pocket. Furthermore, the Guam Power Authority has added over 125 megawatts of utility-scale renewable energy and energy storage from solar farms in Nalahan and Manilao, and strategically placed battery energy storage systems. GPA's 2022 Integrated Resource Plan anticipates over 180 megawatts in additional renewable energy projects. I thank the Guam Power Authority for working with me on this legislation by providing feedback and revisions to the initial language. GPA General Manager John Beneventi was very open to this idea. He and his team provided very valuable input, and I look forward to working with them on attaining the goal of 100% renewable energy by 2045. The National Renewable Energy Laboratory and the Guam Power Authority have asserted that solar energy is currently the most viable form of renewable energy for Guam. Rooftop solar presents solutions to Guam's limited land inventory and the vulnerability of solar farms to typhoons. Rooftop solar systems reduce the need for land while utilizing spaces that are currently not being utilized. Rooftop solar has been proven to be more resilient to typhoons based on data from rooftop solar projects in both Puerto Rico and the Northern Mariana Islands. However, the only rooftop solar program currently available through GPA is the Net Energy Metering Program, or NEM program. GPA and the CCU have asserted that the NEM program is too cost prohibitive for the Power Authority, and thus they assert that it becomes less sustainable with the more customers it adds to the NEM program. The NEM program allows homeowners to produce energy via rooftop solar systems. Excess energy produced by NEM customers is fed back into the energy grid. The homeowner is then credited on a 1-to-1 ratio based on the net energy they produce, resulting in a reduction of their power bill. GPA and the CCU have asserted that this amounts to the Power Authority purchasing solar power from homeowners at the same rate at which they sell power to other customers. The Virtual Power Plant program provides an alternative rooftop solar program that addresses the challenges of the NEM program while promoting more accessible, affordable, clean, renewable energy. In this way, GPA is able to structure the Virtual Power Plant rooftop solar program in a manner that generates cheaper and cleaner power for the grid, maintains the stream of revenues necessary for the operations of the overall energy grid, broadens the access of renewable energy to ratepayers, lessens its reliance on imported fossil fuels, lessens the need for land, lowers utility bills, and works towards Guam's overall renewable energy goal. This program adds renewable energy to the grid through a distributed generation model with no cost to homeowners and zero upfront cost to the utility, while decreasing the overall cost of fuel, thus decreasing rates for all customers. A virtual power plant program enables GPA to manage the energy produced through a network of solar hosts with rooftop solar photovoltaic systems and battery energy storage systems, as if the network itself was a power plant. I believe the Virtual Power Plant program is a tailored solution to Guam's energy needs that will reduce power rates, build our resiliency, and take us one step towards reaching our goal, well, at least it's my goal, of making Guam green again, green with renewable energy. Thank you. And with that, I will now call up those who have signed up to testify in order of how they have signed in on the sign-in sheet. First is Mr. Fred Harecki from the Public Utilities Commission, as well as Mr. John Beneventi and Graham Botha. All right, Mr. Harecki, you may begin.
All right. Thank you, Chairperson, Senators Brown and Taitigui, who was here earlier. My name is Fred Harecki, and I'm the Chief Administrative Law Judge of the Guam Public Utilities Commission. I'll be presenting this testimony this morning on behalf of Dr. Jeffrey Johnson, the Chairman of the Commission. The Public Utilities Commission appreciates the opportunity to speak on Bill number 35136, and for the reasons stated in the testimony, supports the bill. There is, however, one provision that we will ask to be amended, and that's been set forth in the testimony. It should make it clear that both 9 months after enactment and 90 days after approval by the PUC is the appropriate time period. And I believe the Guam Power Authority is suggesting the same amendment. The legislative findings for this bill indicate that renewable energy produced by a virtual power plant can provide renewable energy that is cheaper than power produced by fossil fuels. We think likely that utility scale power plants are perhaps a less costly way to develop this power, but for various reasons, we believe that it's a very good idea to have a virtual power plant program within the system. The energy produced by the system, the VPPP, would be less costly than fossil fuel generation. There is an advantage in providing a mix or diversity, I suppose, in solar generation sources in Guam, and that includes, as the chairperson pointed out, utility scale generation, net metering, and the virtual power plant program. So diversity is always a good factor to have different types of energy sources within your system. We think the VPPP will contribute to that. The VPPP consists of a network of rooftop solar photovoltaic systems and battery storage on the rooftops of homeowners, businesses, government agencies, and nonprofit organizations. At least initially, the energy produced by the program would be limited to 20 megawatts. Another distinct advantage of the program is that it utilizes rooftops. And we know that land is a scarce resource, and for larger power plants, it certainly takes a lot of land to be able to provide that. So based on the fact that land is a dwindling resource, I think it's also a good idea to utilize rooftops where available. Under the program, there will be a need for computers, rooftop solar systems, aggregation software that can control the production, storage, and output of energy from the systems, and the required battery energy storage. These are costs that will be borne by the developers of the system. The PUC appreciates the fact that the bill maintains the role of the PUC in determining whether the VPPP program should be approved. The program provides that solar hosts will receive a credit on their electricity bill or otherwise be compensated by GPA or the developer for the use of the rooftops. And quoting the bill, the exact amount or rate of the solar host credit is to be determined by GPA with review and approval by the PUC. The independent role of the PUC as a rate-setting body is maintained by this bill. In conclusion, the VPPP will result in a beneficial addition to the Guam Solar Energy Program. GPA should only be required to establish the VPP within 90 days after it is approved by the PUC. Thank you for your consideration of this testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Harecki, for your testimony this morning. Next, Mr. John Beneventi, GPA General Manager.
Half a day and good morning, Chairman Ridgell, Senator Brown, Senator Taitewi. Good morning, everyone. First of all, thank you for the opportunity for testifying in favor of Bill 351-36. And again, the Guam Power Authority, I'd like to start out. First of all, I'm John Beneventi, General Manager of Guam Power Authority. The Guam Power Authority recently updated its Integrated Resource Plan, which was approved by the Consolidated Commission on Utilities and the Guam Public Utilities Commission earlier this year. The IRP is Guam's Clean Energy Master Plan, and the plan includes adding over 180 megawatts of additional utility-scale renewable, establishing a smaller-scale rooftop PV program, electric fleet transition, and establishing an electric vehicle program. By 2026, we project to reach milestones towards the clean energy and responsible environmental management, achieving 26% minimal renewable energy generation, annual imports reduction of about 1.17 million barrels, continued compliance with the consent decree and all U.S. EPA air and water quality standards, 99% reduction of SO2 emissions on the island, annual wastewater outflow reduced by over 1 million gallons for use at the Okudu power plant, and lower, most importantly, lower stabilized energy bills. Virtual power plants are emerging in the mainland U.S., and earlier this month, Texas ERCOT approved a 3-year aggregate distributed energy resource pilot to boost reliability by leveraging customer-owned energy batteries into the Texas energy market when needed. This pilot project allows utilities to evaluate costs and benefits without full implementation. The virtual power plant model could have a role in achieving Guam's 50% renewable standard mandate. Rooftop programs are a supplemental conversion of oil to jobs. While rooftop solar will not result in the lower energy costs that utility-scale renewables do today, The value remains in lessening the impact of perennially fluctuating fuel oil prices. To achieve our 50% renewable energy goal, we will need to add an additional 400 megawatts of renewable energy by 2030 and an additional 500 megawatts beyond 2030 to achieve the 100% renewable energy goal by 2045. Although there appears to be adequate land mass to accomplish these needs, I estimate potential rooftop solar capacity in the neighborhood of about 300 megawatts. Rooftop solar will be a small component of GPA's overall renewable energy capacity and will continue to impact the LEAC under the current net metering energy program. GPA intends to pursue rooftop solar programs through planned procurements determined by generation capacity and taking advantage of economies of scale to reduce prices, thus impact to the ratepayers. Continued technical system upgrades and new technologies for renewable energy integration will determine the best suited models, such as the virtual power plant, community solar, and other programs that will be recommended for CCU and PUC approval. I do request that the legislature amend the bill's line 9 by changing language to establish a virtual power plant VPP program within 9 months of enacting and 90 days after approval by the Public Utilities Commission. It must be clear that the program requires PUC approval in order to be implemented. Rate determination falls under the PUC's purview, and programs like this can't proceed without their approval, and this change is necessary in order to avoid any violation of GPA's existing bond covenants. My apologies for not catching that earlier. No? In closing, GPA believes Bill 351-36 is a viable option towards the achieving of our clean energy goals. GPA is eager to implement programs and projects that will achieve the most affordable, clean, reliable, resilient energy for all ratepayers. Thank you for the opportunity to provide this testimony, and I've also provided an attachment of a presentation that we put together on GPA Clean Energy Plan, which provides an overview of where we are now, where we're heading, and what is the plan in the future, what the rates may look at, what our objectives are, what are the CIPs required within the system to be able to integrate more and more renewables, whether it's utility scale or rooftop solar. Because the days of kind of plug and play are kind of over. We have to implement other CIPs now to make sure a stable, reliable system. But again, this, like Attorney Areki has said, this can be part of the plan of the clean energy master plan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Benavente. And just for the record, I have no problem with the recommendations by both Mr. Hareki and yourself, Mr. Benavente, on behalf of the PUC and GPA, respectively, with regards to this minor adjustment to ensure that it requires the PUC approval first and 90 days after PUC approval. I don't have a problem with that. I think that's fair. So I do plan to, we can probably amend that section in committee before the bill gets reported out.
Thank you.
Next on the list for testimony this morning, we do have Mr. William Weir, Dr. Weir, if he's here. I'm sorry, Mr. Botha, did you have any testimony to provide? For questions? Okay. Thanks. Good morning, Dr. Weir. If you could, for the record, introduce yourself, and then you may proceed with your testimony this morning.
Good morning. My name is Dr. William Weir. I'm a local physician, and for the purposes of this hearing, I am also a member of the NIM program, having had rooftop solar for several years now. This proposal, I think, is long overdue in many respects. Up until even this time, rooftop solar has not been actively pursued by GPA, despite their rhetoric, and in fact has been actively discouraged in many instances. I speak with some experience with this. For years, I worked at the Southern Region Medical Center in Inarajan, which is a relatively new facility. When it was constructed, it was planned to have rooftop solar as a part of the program in order to ensure that during power outages and typhoons, services would not be interrupted. Part of that program included a large water tank to ensure that water supplies would be available as well. Several years ago, monies were made available by the federal government through GITA for various projects here on Guam, and I pushed our people to pursue this. They came back several weeks later indicating that GPA had actively discouraged this. As you may or not be aware, the rooftop solar program, when originally proposed, was basically a barter system. GPA took my power and then gave it back. And any excess was then compensated for at a rate that the legislature had then fixed. GPA has maintained over the last several years that this program was, quote, cost prohibitive for the utility. And I accepted that initially until April of 2021, when GPA came up with a proposal to mandate that energy storage systems be attached to the NIM system. As part of this proposal, they made the mistake of showing just where their monies were being spent. And it became apparent that they're making money off of the NIM system. They're not losing money. And basically, they are appropriating excess power without compensation. My question to the legislature at this point is that why is it reasonable to pay exorbitant rates to oil suppliers out of Singapore when it's not reasonable to supply local providers who can use this money to support their systems. Unfortunately, GPA's policies have pushed rooftop solar into a much less attractive position now. Until the last 2 or 3 years, money could be borrowed on equity at relatively cheap rates, and it's still relatively cheap, but those rates have doubled over the last couple of years, which means that individuals who put their money into the systems have a longer payback than they would have had GPA not opposed this up until this time. This type of system that's proposed, I think, is excellent. I would envision each village that has the capability of large-scale production, namely a school, have a battery system of 2 to 5 megawatts. This would ensure that when outages occur across the island, that villages could be isolated and therefore not necessarily lose power. I think this is a concept that is long overdue. The other thing that I think the legislature needs to consider is that this is not just a power proposal. Rooftop solar by private individuals results in lowering of home ownership cost and of self-employed business costs. And so that this has a much greater economic impact than just the effects on GPA. And I think that's a very important thing. I think we should also consider down the road what is going to be happening with electric vehicles. The governor has already been pushing electric school buses. Electric cars are becoming a bit more prominent on Guam. I was fortunate enough to get in on the ground floor of electric vehicles when I bought one a year and a half ago. And the savings in gasoline have been astronomical. And the capability of the vehicle on the road is also very good. I use my rooftop solar system to power my car. This is eminently affordable. And if people are going to continue to live on Guam, they need to be able to have a home. They need to be able to drive a car or have, unless the legislature is planning to do massive mass transit changes, which I don't see that happening. My main concern with this proposal, as stated, is that it is heavily weighted in favor of GPA. GPA and the PUC have a close, almost incestual relationship. There is no way around that, apparently, and I speak from experience. I went to the PUC, inquired in their office, and was told there's no problem with presenting proposals to the PUC. And after 4 to 6 months of working on this, I developed a proposal which I felt was reasonable, that made home ownership affordable and allowed GPA to not lose money on the process. And was told that because I hadn't gone through the proper GPA and CCU procedures, that the PUC was unable to look at this. I think leaving the oversight for this system with GPA and the PUC without some other oversight is irresponsible by the legislature. If you have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them.
Thank you, Dr. Weir, for your testimony this morning. At this time, I'll open it up to my colleagues to ask questions or make any comments or ask questions of any members of the panel this morning. Senator Terlaje, and forgive me, I failed to recognize Senator Joanne Brown, who joined us as well. I apologize, Senator Brown. Senator Terlaje, please, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the panel that's here today to testify on this legislation. I do have some questions with regards to the, well, first let me ask Mr. Benavente, how many panels would be needed in order to create 20 megawatts?
I believe it's like 400 watts per panel. So if you take 20,000 divided by, say, 465 watts, I think that's the number of panels. I can do that right now.
Please, yeah, just curious because there is a cap, you know, on each resident or location of, or whoever's availing themselves of the credit, that only 20 megawatts is, it's capped.
It's 25 megawatt for residential.
I'm sorry, it's 25?
Yes.
Okay, my bad.
Sorry. 25,000 divided by 465.
How many panels would that be?
I'm sorry. That's not 25,000. That's 25,000 kilowatts times 1,000 equals watts divided by 465. About 54,000, 4,000 panels. About 4,000 panels, like 54,000 panels.
And are you familiar with Hawaii's VPP that they implemented?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Well, there is an article out regarding Hawaii's movement into this direction as well, utilizing 3 of the islands. And I had some questions with regards to that because I thought maybe, you know, with this bill that you may provide us some information on how it's working in Hawaii, considering, you know, we have the same kind of elements as far as weather is concerned and sunshine as well as wind. You know,
I think it's going to work, Senator, is over the next few months here, we will be developing what may be the best strategy to implement the virtual power plant. It could be on bigger capacity units, could be the schools, it could be other businesses as an initial start. So again, we want to try and determine how we can get the best cost for everybody and at the same time maximize the program, no? So, but there is a difficulty just comparing Hawaii and Texas and ourselves in that the grid is one of the most important things that we have to consider. The grid there's 52 circuits on the island. Not every circuit can take all big megawatts. Case in point, the Papa 221, 222 down in Agat, that's already saturated. It's saturated to the point where there are some voltage problems. So this is how we have to figure this all out and then come out with a program to make it happen. No? And then most likely would include batteries for virtual so that you can shift that and help towards the peak time. Or, I mean, some cases it may be that we can still absorb some with batteries and some without batteries, as long as we want to minimize the cost to everybody. So again, I'd like to say that all the different models, yes, is an attempt towards this, and we will look at all of this, but at the same time, we have to look at our grid and then establish the most feasible model for ourselves. So the concept virtual power plant, yes, we understand it well, and we're going to apply it and see how we can work it, and maybe we're going to have to tweak it to make it something that will work for us. No? So Hawaii in itself, you know, there is a difference between Hawaii and ourselves, and one, Hawaii is renewables at any cost, in my opinion, you know. Guam is not renewables at any cost. It's renewables to try to get the least cost, because we want to get our ratepayers' cost down, become affordable, and then secondly, sustainable. And that's why all our contracts now with renewables have been at a 1% escalator. So that's our hedge into the future. That 1 cent that's just fixed cost, renewables go up and down, then it doesn't, you know, we're not impacted as much as we are. We can't keep going up and down based on world events, no? So that's the plan. The renewables, the large scale, aggregating rooftop solar and trying to make the best of everything here to achieve our objective, no? And that's why this program fits right into this plan.
Does GPA plan on having a, you know, just a pilot program to start off with, you know, just to test the waters? Because it's not just the, you know, everyone thinks that, okay, it's going to help, you know, provide less power, I mean, or cost for our power, but, you know, there's some safety issues that I'm really concerned about, especially the lithium battery. It's known to, well, I don't know if, I know about 5 years ago, they had some problems with it exploding, especially when it's in certain elements of weather, you know, that it's caused, and now these things are going to be in residential areas, and that's my concern, you know. So is that a plan that you might want to do in doing a pilot program?
We share your concern, and we will make sure that whatever is put in has the safety components, the requirements for it. So, we'll make sure that the developer has is true to that responsibility to protect the homeowner, no, the solar host from any activity like that. And part of the reason why this program could work with us is so that we can make the developer responsible for the maintenance and activities of the solar PV within the solar host. Because right now it could be that, you know, maintenance is not accomplished in some of those. And again, I don't know exactly what happened in those fires. Or it could be that maintenance is not accomplished in that, and therefore created those issues. So we have, you know, by having a program like this, we can ensure that the developer takes the appropriate action. Otherwise, we will not pay. See? So we now have the leverage to be able to do that.
So are you saying that a pilot program at this point would not be feasible, or that you've already, you know...
No, well, I think we're agreeing on the same thing. The program that we are putting together is kind of a pilot program. It's starting with somewhere around 20 megawatts. And being the case, if that works, then it can be expanded. And again, because you don't want to just open up a program and without an end, you want, like the PUC have done with the net metering, right? They capped it at so much, and then when we came to that cap, they decided to increase it further. So they have that to evaluate how the program is doing. See, so the process will allow for that. So our initial program will probably be around 20. If we're looking at big rooftops that can be accomplished. For example, one school could be around anywhere from 1 to 2 megawatts. No? So
Is
again,
it-
that doesn't take that long to, but again, we have to figure out what locations, the constraints of every location, so that when they come out and bid on all of this, then they know what is there and what to provide, no?
Mr. Benavente, I think it stated that credit will be given to the homeowner that's hosting, the panels, or will be giving some compensation, funding compensation. That was incorporated in this as well. Is there any means of contacting Rev and Tax, because is it taxable, receiving any kind of revenue like that? That's something that may be concerned as you're
Yeah,
going through the program, to contact Rev and Tax, because if there's any kind of,
It could be, because case
Yeah.
in point, demand side management program.
uh-huh,
When we give rebates, we're required to report the revenue and tax that.
Right.
So this could be similar, and we
Okay.
will determine all of that as we develop this program.
as you develop- okay, that's good, and I'm really concerned about the safety issues, so I'm looking forward to seeing your plans. Is there anything in here, I know that PUC has to agree upon it, and then, but, Mr. Chair, in the bill, that once they do have a program put together, a nice PowerPoint presentation and how they're going to move forward, would that need to be approved by the legislature, or this just gives them the authority to just move forward and get this done?
Yes, the way the bill's written now is it doesn't require them to come back to the legislature for approval. And, just for the record, technically, GPA really doesn't, as I've learned, doesn't really need to come to the legislature for any approval for virtually almost anything, except for certain, maybe perhaps bond borrowing issues, things of that nature. But in terms of developing their rate structure, their whatever other power program they need to develop, they really just need approval from the Public Utilities Commission. Well, of course, the CCU as well. So the step is GPA gets the CCU approval for whatever program they're going to implement, then they have to seek approval from the PUC. And really, the only thing that they need approval from the legislature for is things like bond borrowing or similar measures that have to do with debt.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
And-
Chair.
And we certainly can provide updates like we typically do. We do presentations, we do updates to the CCU. We can provide updates to the legislature for your oversight.
I appreciate that, and Mr. Chair, if I may, to make any kind of amendment in there, would provide that transparency that I think not only for this legislature, but for the people of Guam as well, to provide that layer of transparency. And so I appreciate if that can be considered and incorporated into the legislation, that they would have to provide the legislation. I mean, I'm not asking for approval at this point, because we know businesses who will probably be going after this contract, shy away whenever the legislature gets involved, but I think that some type of follow-up with this body, to see how it's moving forward. And also, I'd like to bring up not just panels, but wind energy as well. I mean, if you're incorporating all this from solar, power into this one battery, I mean, the possibility of also incorporating wind energy. May something you can think of, Mr. Benavente, just not on solar, but we can find some way to incorporate all aspects of the ability to capture that type
We'll
of
take a look at
energy.
that. Right now, again, our thoughts is that there's enough megawatts to be produced and then converted from oil to jobs, that there's opportunities for that as long as they become viable and affordable and doesn't impact the ratepayers, and of course the customer who's hosting it wants to do it. No, so we'll take a look at it. That could be a separate program in itself, because I mean, we're actually getting it fixed now. The one down, actually the technician is coming in now from France. Will be coming in from France to fix the one windmill that we have down south, but it hasn't been very, in terms of the data, it hasn't been feasible enough to pay for the windmill. It's paid for because the Department of Energy gave us a $2 million grant, but it's not, if we were to put it together, that didn't work. But again, we're not close to that, and actually, Senator, our 180 megawatt renewables bid is agnostic to the different renewables. So it's not limited to solar PV. It's just that the reality is no one wants to put their dollar into anything else but solar PV. But it's agnostic as required by the PUC. When we go out, it's required that it be open to all types of technologies.
I appreciate that and considering it. So other than that, Mr. Chair, I appreciate it. I have to leave for an appointment soon, so I just, I'll continue to listen on the online. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Titleby. Dr. Weir, do you have something you'd like to add?
Yes, I'd like to address Senator Titleby's concerns here about batteries. In Hawaii, their system relies on home batteries for power storage. This proposal is a little bit different in that it proposes that GPA provide the batteries, and I think that that makes a lot more sense. A large battery is much more cost efficient than multiple small batteries. And your concerns about fire hazards and that I think are justified, but this will concentrate them in areas that should be safe. So while that concern is reasonable, I think that it's one that should be overridden by the advantages of, as Mr. Benavente has pointed out, that when you have too much power input into part of the system, you need to be able to use that power, and batteries will do that. And they will allow that power that's generated during the day to be used during peak load systems at night, which will decrease power usage from your oil generation sources. So this is a proposal that I think makes sense, and until such time as Guam's solar capabilities exceeds 200% of the daytime usage, any concerns about batteries, I think, are really, you don't need to be thinking about that. And at this point, we're nowhere near that capacity.
Thank you, Dr. Weir. And if I may, I could add something to the conversation and some of the concerns brought up as well. There's been a lot of negative publicity about battery fires, but actually I think the rate of battery fires is actually a lot smaller than what's been publicized in the media. Tesla has implemented their Powerwall, which is essentially a home battery device that they just stick on the wall somewhere. It's not even that big of a device. They've rolled out the virtual power plant program with Tesla in Australia, in southern Australia primarily. And the way their program is set up is that the homes all have solar panels and a Tesla Powerwall battery system in their home. And that's how they've connected it. I haven't found anything online indicating any real safety hazards with it. The technology has come such a long way. They've implemented so many new safety features with battery technology. Perhaps there have been batteries that have caught fire in the past, and there is always that possibility, but battery technology has come such a long way. I mean, lithium batteries, it's what's in our cell phone right now. Everyone's carrying a lithium battery in their pocket as we speak. No one's afraid of their pocket catching on fire. I mean, there's been reports on the internet where they say, oh, my Samsung or my iPhone caught on fire, but I think the rate of incidence of those is very, very, very small. Like I said, I guarantee everyone here today and everyone watching at home has their cell phone with a lithium battery in their pocket or in their hand as we speak. So I think the dangers of lithium batteries have been over-exaggerated. However, there's a danger in everything. You know, driving your car, it's dangerous, right? So I mean, cars carry gas in a gas tank that can blow up, and cars do catch on fire. We see car fires all the time. So that's a danger in and of itself. So I think the dangers of battery technology have been over-exaggerated by certain people and perhaps certain media outlets or whatever, or the internet these days. It's easy to blow things out of proportion via social media and the internet. So I don't see the batteries as being a major safety hazard. But again, everything has some level of safety hazard, including the vehicle you drive. But I think the safety hazards have been brought down to such a minimum that it's within the realm of normal safety standards. So I don't see that as a major stumbling block or hindrance to this program. In addition, if I could add a couple things, I know, Dr. Weir, you had mentioned that one of your concerns with the measure is that it seems weighted, I think as you put it, in the favor of GPA a little too much. Allow me to explain some of the reasoning behind the measure. In crafting this measure, I worked closely with GPA because I realized that there are so many variables and so many technical issues involved with this that really GPA has to take the helm of this thing and put it together. As General Manager John Beneventi stated, you can't just throw a bunch of solar in one area because I forgot the term he used, but the whatever switch that's there can't handle the load. So there's a lot of other things he needs to look at from a grid perspective. That requires a technical expertise of GPA and its engineers to take a look at the grid as a whole and figure out where they can plug in these virtual power plant type models and where it fits best into the electric grid. So that's why I really wanted to leave most of it in the hands of GPA, because ultimately they're the ones who are going to have to look at all the technical details and figure out how to make this thing work and how to make it implementable so that it doesn't, for lack of a better term, crash their system, so to speak. So that's the reasoning behind it. And also I know Senator Tidy was bringing up wind energy. I would love to incorporate wind energy, but again, that's something that's at the discretion of GPA to figure out how it best fits in. My understanding, based on the data, and we actually did request data from GPA in the past on wind energy and what it's producing, down the one singular thing that we have, wind turbine, because they say windmill is the wrong term, right? Wind turbine that they have down at Cross Island Road. And according to the data, it really hasn't generated much energy for, I don't know what the reason is. Perhaps it's not sited in the right place, but it is kind of in a windy area. I mean, that area is generally known to be a sort of windier area. So I don't know, perhaps there's a better area to put it. But so far, the data we have is that it has not produced as much energy as we would like to make it economically feasible. Am I correct, Mr. Beneventi?
That's correct, Senator. And that's actually one of the wind tunnel areas of the island, the Cross Island Road. So again, we're fixing it, and then we'll see whether the data improves. No?
Thank you.
And you are correct, Senator. And thank you for working with us, because then it's an opportunity for us to, we really have to look at the grid at this point. The days of just plug and play are gone. As you can see, we put in the 24 megawatt battery at Agana and the 16 megawatt battery in Talafofo, and that has stopped the intermittency from like this to a straight line. And it's in my presentation that's there in the back. And so now we're able to, but we can't allow it to continue now to go like this, so we have to manage this. And again, like I mentioned, that is part of our plan to aggressively over the next year, other than the renewables, which actually is going to come out by the end of this month for the 180, begin the process so that we can come out with the rooftop and start taking aggregates of that. So certainly we are going to work very hard in getting this done. And of course, the PUC and everyone will see it. And again, we're very transparent. We do have our presentation. I have to get my CCU approval first, and then I go to the PUC, no? So that whole process they can watch online, they can see us, making it happen. No? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Benavente. Dr. Weir.
I would agree with you that there's no way that GPA cannot be involved with this. My concern is that in the past it has been much easier for GPA to go with their past experience. And so it's been very easy for them to say, well, we don't want to deal with this at this time. And that's why there needs to be some oversight.
Thank you, Dr. Weir. Okay, Senator Brown, do you have any questions or comments?
Don't have a lot. I appreciate certainly the testimony that's been provided, and maybe at some point I can tell my son that the windmill will finally be working, because I get asked that question quite frequently driving to school on Cross Island Road. How come the windmill's not turning? So I think he'll be happy to know the windmill, because he does keep an eye on that windmill. And I know overall, Mr. Benavente, you're integrating all of these ideas. I know a lot of forethought was put in place with the construction of your new power plant. And so how do you see all this playing in with the construction of the new power plant and the capacity that that's going to provide? And then, of course, looking at the solar energy. And, of course, you mentioned, you're still seeing what ultimately will be the outcome of wind energy, whether or not that's a viable opportunity. Is the cost going to be more cost prohibitive than the benefit that our ratepayers are going to receive back? So if you could just give me and the public that could be watching a short summary of the overall, because, it's not just building a power plant and that's it. I know you guys have taken in and reviewed how you're going to integrate all of these potential energy sources so that our people can get the power that they need and provide for Guam's future growth.
Thank you, Senator. That's a very good question. First of all, we have to look at the generation. We're doing a major paradigm shift in energy. Renewables has been coming into the picture in the past several years. We've taken advantage of utility scale at this point, and we also have experience on rooftop solar. So all of this now is coming all together with the plan, in the new integrated resource plan. The cornerstone of that plan really is the new Ukudu power plant, and the reason for that is that our plants are old, they're aged, and they are not as efficient as the technologies that are available today. So therefore, the new power plant, and again, they can't comply with US EPA regulations unless we put in substantial investment into them. But therefore, putting investment into older machines is just not economically feasible. We're just going to be paying a lot more money and eventually have to replace it. So the decision for the Okudu power plant is in place, and the power plant, if you see in our presentation here, is well on its way. It's moving. It is scheduled to be completed in less than 2 years now, in about the mid-2024. When the power plant comes on the line, the current consumption of oil will be reduced by 500 to 600,000 barrels a year. That's the first step. 600,000 barrels a year times $100 is 60 million, times 20 is about $70, $80 million a year less in oil. The money that we, like the senator said, we bring money in here, work real hard for it, and then give it out in oil. So that money is going to stay in the economy, right? So that's the first step. It's coming on the line, very efficient, more efficient than all the other machines, which will be relegated to be reserves only in case that machine is down, right? And it's under an IPP contract. If they don't produce energy, we don't pay. So they strictly have to produce. In addition to that, part of the plan was the KEPCO 60 megawatt solar up in Pocket, Manila. So that 60 megawatt now came on the line in June. And that's reducing the annual consumption of oil by about 250,000 barrels, just that 60 megawatt. So and that's savings that people want today, based on today's rates, about $3 million a month. So that's how much we're saving. If it wasn't for that, our power bills today will be higher. So if you take the 600 plus the 250, that's 850,000 barrels oil that will be importing to Guam by the end of 2024. No? We're currently bringing in 2.7 million barrels, so we're going to reduce that to 1.9. If we add the Phase 4 renewables by 2026, no, the ones we're going out for bid and that's successful, no, then that will be another 600 to 700,000 barrels less. So you take that 700,000 from the 1.9, that's 1.2. So we're going to reduce our total imports from 2.7 million barrels down to about 1.2 million barrels. We've cut more than half our exposure to fuel oil. You add programs like this, no? That 20 megawatt virtual. 20 megawatt compared to the 60 is 250,000 barrels. That's 80,000 barrels of oil for just this program that will reduce. Again, you keep adding all of this, the more you get away from oil. You still need oil in the near term until you get towards eventually 100% and with viability and reliability based on the technologies that are available then, right? But between now, that's the amount that you reduce your exposure to fuel oil prices and world events. Now, that's what we talk about, affordable and sustainable. I mean, today, this year, it went from 15 cents to 31 cents. You're not going to see that again. The 31 cents that you're seeing today by 2026 will be no more than 14 cents. So you cut the fuel oil LEAC for our ratepayers by half. So the combination of all of this, the improved reliability, the additional capacity we have to absorb the military growth and everybody else, is just going to make a beautiful picture for the ratepayers in the next few years here. And then continue to do the adding in the programs to minimize. And in some programs, it may cost a little bit more than the LEAC. But it's an investment, and again, this is something that we'll all work out with the PUC and everyone. It's an investment you make as a hedge against impacting fuel oil. So the more you hedge, the more you keep that price. And if the price is affordable at this level and people accept that, then you can afford a little bit more here to make that happen. And again, that's just the decision that occurs down the road. No? So that's the picture that we're heading, and the reality is that, even the presentation you see, the steel is going up, the foundations are, the tanks are already being welded. There's 12 major pieces of equipment down at the port, over 100 tons each, with an 18, 22-wheeler trailer. Being prepared, we're expecting the DPW permit shortly for the transportation of that. So you'll be seeing that, I can't say run through, I'm saying crawling through from the south, from the port all the way up to Ukudo at 1 mile per hour over the next few weeks here. And that will continue the installation of the power plant. Because again, we're trying to get them, make sure they're done by by the middle of 2024. So all of this is going to, you limit your exposure, even at the high prices of fuel. The island will no longer be susceptible to such a huge swing that, all my career I've seen up and down. I'm a good guy today and the next one and the worst guy to go around the island, right? And by the way, Senator, it also provides clean air, the 99% of the air. I know your major concern about the port. I'm happy to report to you that PD 8 and 9 no longer burn residual oil. They're burning 0.15% sulfur oil, both of them as of September 1st. No? In addition to that, cabins number 1 and 2 no longer burn the 1.19 or the 2% sulfur oil. As of today, it's burning 0.2% sulfur oil. So the plan down there now is producing in a clean environment. And when the Okudu power plant comes on the line, 6 months, no later than 6 months thereafter, Cabers 1 and 2 will be retired, and the year is again much more. But today, you can safely say to the employees of the port that there's something that you have pushed for, and it's here. No?
Well, I appreciate that, Mr. Beneventi. That's really good news because we've had those discussions. You did, we did sit down and you did outline what the plans were for GPA for the future, and it's certainly something to see it now all falling into place. And just overall our environment, our air quality, and certainly, as you mentioned, it was a concern at the time for the port that impacted our employees that were unloading cargo and, performing a very valuable service. So knowing that we've reduced that threat and that concern is very good news. I think our people there and all the other businesses that work at the port and surround the port, I'm sure, appreciate the information. And you did, and you followed through with what your commitment was. So thank you for relaying that to us here in the committee and certainly to our public. It's very, very good news. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for responding to my question, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity to inquire. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Dr. Weir.
The windmill, if that's what you want to call it, has been out of commission now for over a year. And so any data that you're looking at there is old data. And it would be nice if GPA would be a little more forthcoming with even their old data, because that hasn't been in the past. I think also that, there's been some concern about, putting money into oil generation plants. And I think realistically we need to realize that, you have to have backup. And so you really can't speak too loudly against that, although I predict that in the next couple, 3 months, when we see this huge power plant rolling, or actually creeping up Marine Drive at 1 mile an hour, I'm sure you're going to get lots of complaints. Also, I think that we need to realize that low sulfur fuel extends the life of machinery in addition to being an improvement for our air quality. So I think that we need to realize that GPA is proceeding, and when it comes to generation of power with fossil fuels, they're pretty much on top of it from my perspective. The problem has been, their reluctance to embark into new territory.
Thank you, Dr. Weir. And so if there's nothing else, I'd like to just wrap it up with, of course, saying to you, Dr. Weir, it's no secret that I was a major opponent to the power plant. There's no secret to that. I was very public about that. And of course, it's been no secret that I've been very critical of GPA, the CCU, and the PUC. That's public knowledge. However, over these years, as the committee chair for power, I've realized that you can't only have a hammer in your toolbox, because not everything's a nail, right? So I can't just be the hammer hammering at everything. At some point, I've got to use some other tools and work with the other agencies involved and work with GPA and with CCU and PUC. And although I disagreed with the new power plant, ultimately, it's going to happen. There's nothing I could do to prevent it. And perhaps I was wrong. I'm big enough to say that I'm not right about everything, although I think I'm always right. I know that I'm not always right. So the power plant's going to proceed. Since then, GPA and the CCU have represented that this is going to be the last power plant. Am I correct? That's what Mr. Beneventi has represented. That I agree with wholeheartedly. So their representation has been that this will be the last power plant burning fossil fuel. And from there, they will begin to integrate and add in renewables and build up this renewable portfolio as that power plant ages, and hopefully eventually phase out that power plant. And as you said, Dr. Weir, we always need some sort of backup, so we'll have to wait and see where we're at in 2045, what kind of technology there is. Who knows? I'm still of the belief in 2045 that we won't even need any fossil fuel power plants as backup. I believe that the technology will be there with battery storage and other forms of storage, that I believe ultimately by 2045 we can go 100% renewable. And GPA and the CCU have said that that is now the goal going forward. So with that, I decided to work with them closely on implementing at least another piece of the puzzle towards their renewables plan, because I think it's going to take a mix of things. They already have some solar farms. I'm sure there'll be plans for some other solar farms in the future, but my goal here was to really work with them on coming up with a plan to start integrating more rooftop solar. And that's really what the idea is behind this bill. And the idea really came about from, to be honest, me being a huge fan of Elon Musk, although I know people are mad at him over Twitter. That's a whole nother story. But I really like what Elon Musk has done with renewables. I follow a lot of his stuff, and he did a lot of renewables in Australia. And so me just reading stories online, I saw this virtual power plant program being conducted in Australia. Their plan is to go to 50,000 rooftops. They're going to put solar panels on 50,000 rooftops via this virtual power plant plan. They've already, I don't know how many rooftops they've hit already, but they've already implemented like phase 1, I believe. I think they're going to do it in 2 or 3 phases. I don't remember exactly. So that's where the idea came about. And after I worked on this idea with my team, we did as much research as we could, seeing how they kind of put this together in other jurisdictions, and then came to GPA and asked them if they could take a look at this plan and figure out something that's workable. And so I thank GPA for working with me on this bill and coming up with something that we all believe is workable. And my hope is that this will just continue to push us along to the ultimate goal of 100% renewables by 2045. So that's the intent behind this measure, and I want to thank everyone for their participation today and for all of the testimony this morning. Mr. Beneventi, if there's anything else you'd like to add?
No, just thank you, Chairman Ridgell, and again, we wish you best in whatever your plans are, and thank you for all your work actually in making this happen. Senator Brown, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beneventi. And with that, if there's no further questions or comments, this concludes our discussions on Bill number 351-36 COR. The committee will continue to accept written statements on today's hearing within 10 business days from today, which may be mailed to my office at 238 Archbishop Flores Street, Suite 906 of DNA Building in Hagåtña. You may also send your statements to us at Clynton Ridgell at guamlegislature.org. That's CLYNTRIDGELL at guamlegislature.org. Or you can send it by fax to 475-4768. Thank you all for your participation. This public hearing is adjourned. It is 10:43 a.m. Thank you.